the ceiling gave way with a roar that didn't sound real, like the world itself had cracked open, and Jacob didn't think he just ran into the fire. Smoke clawed at his throat, heat wrapped around his skin like punishment, and somewhere deep inside the collapsing office building, a woman screamed a sound so raw it didn't belong in a place filled with glass walls and polished floors. It sounded like fear stripped down to its bones. If that scream had reached you, what would you have done? Would you have turned away, told yourself someone else would help, or would you have stepped into the flames knowing you might not come back? Jacob didn't think about his own life. He didn't think about the fact that his 6-year-old son, Noah, was waiting for him at home with a half-finished drawing taped to the fridge. He didn't think about the bills stacked on the kitchen counter, or the exhaustion that never left his bones. He only followed the sound. The hallway was already collapsing, beams cracking, sparks raining like a twisted snowfall. He found her trapped beneath a fallen piece of metal, and broken glass, her white blouse stained with soot. Her breathing uneven, her eyes wide with something that wasn't just fear. It was disbelief. She didn't look like she belonged in this chaos. Later, he would learn her name was Rebecca Hayes, CEO, powerful, untouchable, the kind of woman who made decisions that shaped lives. But in that moment, she was just someone who couldn't move. Jacob didn't ask questions. He ignored the burning pain in his arm as he pushed debris aside, the heat blistering his skin as he forced space enough to pull her free. She cried out once, a broken sound, and then went quiet, her body trembling against his as he lifted her. The fire behind them surged, swallowing the path he had taken to get in. For a split second, even Jacob hesitated, then he tightened his grip, and ran. Each step felt heavier, the smoke thicker, the world narrowing into a tunnel of heat and noise. His lungs screamed, his legs threatened to give out. And still, he ran, because stopping meant death not just for him, but for her. When he finally burst through the exit doors, collapsing onto the cold pavement outside, the world came rushing back, sirens, shouting, flashing lights, people running in every direction. He barely registered it. All he knew was that she was still in his arms. Paramedics rushed forward, pulling her away, their voices urgent and sharp. Someone tried to sit him up, to check his burns, but Jacob didn't hear them. He was staring at her. Rebecca's eyes fluttered open as they laid her on the stretcher. For a moment, everything seemed to slow, the chaos, the noise, the pain, and she looked directly at him. Not past him, not through him, at him, and her first words weren't what anyone expected. They weren't "thank you." They weren't "helping me," they weren't even panic. Her voice was weak, barely more than a whisper, but it cut through everything. "You came back again." Jacob froze. The words hit him harder than the fire ever could. Because he had never seen her before. At least, that's what he thought. The days that followed were a blur of hospital visits, bandages, and quiet pain that settled deep into his muscles. Jacob returned home with his arm wrapped, his body aching, and his mind caught on those words. "You came back again." Noah noticed the silence first. Children always did. His small hands held onto Jacob's uninjured arm, his voice soft with worry as he asked if his dad was okay. Jacob forced a smile, told him everything was fine, told him it was just a bad day at work, but inside, something felt unfinished. 3 days later, his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. He almost didn't answer. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, but carried something else beneath it, something hesitant. Rebecca wanted to see him. Jacob hesitated longer this time. People like her didn't call people like him. But something in his chest wouldn't let him say no. The hospital room was quiet when he walked in, sunlight cutting through the blinds in soft lines. Rebecca sat upright in the bed, her arm in a sling, her face pale but composed. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she looked at him the same way she had outside the fire, like she was searching for something. "You don't remember me," she said softly. Jacob shook his head, and that's when she told him. 2 years ago, on a cold night in Chicago, she had been stranded on the side of the road after her car broke down. No signal, no help, just miles of empty highway and the quiet fear that no one would stop, but someone had. A man with tired eyes and a child asleep in the back seat. Jacob. He had pulled over without hesitation, helped her get to safety, refused any kind of payment, and left before she could even ask his name. At the time, Rebecca had been too consumed by her own life to think much of it, until she realized how rare that kind of kindness was. And now, in the worst moment of her life, when everything was burning, when escape seemed impossible, it was him again. Jacob stood there, speechless. He didn't remember her. Not because she wasn't important but because helping people had never been something he kept score of. It was just who he was. "I didn't know it was you," he said finally. Rebecca smiled faintly, her eyes softening in a way that felt unfamiliar to someone like her. "I think that makes it matter even more." What followed wasn't instant transformation or dramatic change. It was something quieter, something real. Rebecca insisted on helping him at first. He refused. Pride, habit, the weight of doing everything alone, it all held him back. But she didn't push. Instead, she showed up. Not as CEO, not as someone powerful, but as someone who remembered. She visited Noah, bringing books and sitting on the floor to listen to his endless stories. She asked Jacob about his life, not the surface answers, but the real ones. The struggles, the loneliness, the nights that felt too long. And slowly, something began to shift. For Rebecca, it was a reminder that success didn't mean anything without connection. For Jacob, it was the first time someone truly saw him not as a worker, not as a burdened father, but as a man who had given more than the world had ever given back. Months passed. The burns healed. The scars remained. But so did something else. Hope. One evening, as they sat quietly watching Noah play in the park, Rebecca turned to him with a look that wasn't about gratitude anymore. It was about something deeper. "Why did you do it?" she asked. Jacob didn't need to think. Because someone needed help. Rebecca looked down, her voice softer than he had ever heard it. "And if it had cost you everything?" Jacob watched his son laugh, the sound light and free in a way he wanted to protect forever. Then he looked back at her. Then at least it would have meant something. Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, but full. Because sometimes, the simplest answers carried the greatest truth. And maybe that's the question we all have to face at some point. What is a life worth, if not the moments we choose to care? Before this story ends, take a moment and tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Jacob's place? The world didn't change overnight. There were still struggles, still hard days, still moments where the past felt heavier than the future. But there was also something new. A second chance. Not just for love, but for healing. For understanding that sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness echo the longest. And sometimes, the people we save, end up saving us right back. If this story touched your heart even a little, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because stories like this remind us that kindness is never wasted, and somewhere out there, someone is still waiting for a reason to believe again.